listener production.
Hey, Tara Cassidy with you and welcome to The Briefing. One Australian state has vowed to ban one of its most lucrative yet controversial sports in a move that's got animal welfare advocates celebrating and those in the sector left shocked and furious.
Deplorable. I can't tell you how disgusted we all are on the mainland. It's got nothing to do with welfare or anything like that. I think we're all sick and tired of politicians making a promise and then backflipping.
Part one of this two-part deep dive into the Australian greyhound racing industry is coming up in the second half of this episode. First though, let's get into the headlines with Helen Smith. It's Monday the 18th of August.
Hey Tara, and to you listening, European leaders will meet with US President Donald Trump at a White House summit after he failed to secure a ceasefire deal with Russian President Vladimir Putin, but did manage to arrange security guarantees for Ukraine instead. Speaking at a press conference after their meeting in Alaska, Trump told media the pair had made progress.
There's no deal until there's a deal, but we had an extremely productive meeting and many points were agreed to. Just a very few that are left. Some are not that significant, but we have a very good chance of getting there. We'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon.
Next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I'll get a little heat on that one, but I could see it possibly happening.
According to Trump's US envoy, part of the agreement made in Alaska includes a robust, game-changing NATO-style defence agreement, which Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky has labelled historic.
However, he reiterated that force should never be used to try and redefine his country's borders, and that's a point he's expected to push when he meets with President Trump Monday US time, along with EU leaders including British PM Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron. Now, Macron says he wants to know how far the US president is prepared to go to protect Ukraine from similar attacks in future, and that any such agreement needed to include Europe and protect Ukraine by air, land and sea. Now, meanwhile, our PM, Anthony Albanese, has praised Trump's continued attempt to advocate for peace, saying Australia wants to see Ukraine and its sovereignty protected, but also saying that Russia should not be rewarded for its invasion and war on Ukraine.
A manhunt is underway after a shooting in Sydney's inner city that left one man dead and another fighting for life. Witnesses say they heard around 16 gunshots fired outside of the Harold Hotel on Sunday night in Forest Lodge, just a few blocks away from the University of Sydney. New South Wales police allege the two men were shot multiple times by unknown people who fled the scene in a car. Paramedics treated both men at the scene, but one could not be saved, with detectives and New South Wales Homicide Squad now looking into the deadly incident.
Meanwhile, there was also a separate violent incident in a going-out precinct in Melbourne over the weekend, with shots fired outside a popular nightclub there too. Now, this happened at the Love Machine, which is in the inner city area, and it happened on Sunday morning after a fight broke out between a group outside the club before those involved fled the scene. Police say it's the third violent incident at the same club in the past few weekends that's allegedly being repeatedly targeted by members of the Comanchero bikie gang. And this also isn't the first shooting at Love Machine. In 2019, two men were murdered in a drive-by shooting, which resulted in two people involved being sentenced to life in prison.
Australian authorities are pushing for a Chinese national accused of pouring boiling coffee over a 9-month-old baby in Queensland last year to be extradited. However, experts have warned it goes against Chinese law. In August, baby Luca was with his mum at a park in Brisbane when police allege a 33-year-old Chinese man, not known to the family, poured a thermos of boiling coffee over him, leaving him with severe burns to 60% of his body. Luca required multiple surgeries, including to his face and upper body, and has since been left with scars. After the attack, police reportedly identified the man involved just 12 hours before he fled, flying out of Sydney days later and travelling to China via New Zealand, where he's remained since.
And according to Chinese media, that man had lived in Australia for 6 years on working holiday and student visas, but had recently had his latest visa application rejected, with one outlet suggesting the attack may have been sparked from his anger over that incident. Now, an arrest warrant for the 33-year-old was issued at the time, and while Australian police have been pushing authorities in China to take action against him and to allow him to be brought back to Australia, Chinese law actually protects citizens from being extradited to face prosecution in other nations. Now, if Australian authorities did manage to arrest this man, he would be facing an intention to cause grievous bodily harm charge, which carries a maximum sentence of life in prison.
Young Australians may have a tougher life than their parents. That's according to the Productivity Commissioner, Danielle Wood, who says young people are facing a future of lower wages, increased costs, and continue to deal with the impacts of climate breakdown, all without major government action tackling economic challenges. She's raised the concerns ahead of the federal government's economic reform roundtable happening this week, with Woods calling on ministers to adopt a growth mindset when they're looking at introducing new policies.
The roundtable is set to start on Tuesday, where business leaders, economists, unions and politicians will come together at Parliament House for a 3-day meeting, which Treasurer Jim Chalmers says is an opportunity to grapple with the big challenges that are facing the Australian economy. Now, the Commissioner released 5 reports ahead of this roundtable with recommendations to improve government regulation and productivity, including things like using more technology and AI. And she says the only way that Australia can lift its wages and opportunities in a sustainable way for future generations, or even improve our economic state, is with that growth mindset, which she says we haven't seen in years.
Yeah, and according to Danielle Wood, there has been a declining appetite for real reform across a number of wealthy nations in recent decades. She says young people are feeling more and more disenfranchised, feeling they won't live better lives than their parents, and that they blame recent Australian government's policy choices, which have led to house prices to grow faster than their incomes, as well as a lack of action on climate change.
Now, Muse might have to change its song name from Supermassive Black Hole soon after a discovery by astronomers that could rewrite history, Albert Einstein's own theories, and all we know about the universe and world we live in, Helen. According to a new study in the Royal Astronomical Society, scientists have discovered what could be the biggest black hole in the universe, 36 billion times the mass of Earth's sun, and one so big they've had to give it its own otherworldly term of ultra-massive black hole. Now, for those that need a little more science background, a black hole is basically this place in space where gravity is so strong that nothing can escape from it, and it's basically like a super cosmic vacuum cleaner. And they formed after the Big Bang, and that's the theory of how the universe was created in this mega explosion 13.8 billion years ago.
And now experts say this ultra-massive black hole that's been dubbed Messier 87 basically goes against our current understandings of science and black holes to date.
Ooh.
Astrophysicists basically say that this one shouldn't exist because it's too big for its age and where it's placed in the universe, because their size reflects how many stars they've devoured. Now, this is interesting and important because basically up until now, scientists have always wondered whether black holes or stars came first, kind of like the old chicken or the egg saying, and they say that this may help them answer that. It may tell us more about the Big Bang Theory and how our universe grew to be what it is now, and we could even know within the next few years.
Wow, next few years is pretty cool. We'll have to keep our eyes across this space, no pun intended. Now, that brings our headlines to a close for today. Coming up next is my 2-part deep dive on the controversial Greyhound racing sector in Australia. Part 1 is coming up straight after headlines, and Part 2 is in your feeds right now. Stay tuned to hear that up next.
The green light has gone through to the control tower. The bunny set in motion. They're about to break. And racing.
For many years now, and increasingly so, there's been concerns around animal welfare, and we're seeing an industry that is at the crossroads, in decline, and does not meet community expectations anymore.
That was Tasmanian Premier Jeremy Rockcliffe last week, announcing that Greyhound racing will be phased out in the state by 2029, leaving those in the industry startled. and with a bit of whiplash after only a year ago being told of the Liberal government's plans to bolster the industry during the election campaign, with training, funding, animal and track safety improvements, and $2 million towards racecourses to, quote, ensure that racing remains vibrant in regional and rural areas. So you can probably see why it's left some in the industry scratching their heads, and those across the nationwide sector, well, furious. One of them is Peita Duncan, the chair of Greyhound Racing Victoria, one of the major racing bodies that's since come to the industry's defence. Peita, thanks so much for joining me on the briefing today. We've just heard this announcement about racing in Tassie, and there's since been calls for Victoria to be next. What's your take?
The Tasmanian move is deplorable. I can't tell you how disgusted we all are on the mainland from every jurisdiction that you have a premier that put out a letter to the racing industry to say he's backing the whole industry in, and 21 days later he has backflipped on that commitment for greyhound racing only just to do a dirty deal so that he can get the numbers to hold the majority in Parliament. It's got nothing to do with welfare or anything like that. In Tasmania, there's 460 full-time equivalent employees in the greyhound racing industry, and they contribute $60 million or over that to the state's economy. Yet this premier has basically traded them off so that he could get the numbers in Parliament. And that is unacceptable. I think we're all sick and tired of politicians making a promise and then backflipping, but particularly something like this where a whole industry is going to be shut down for no other reason than one's personal ambition. So that's why we had to come out as the biggest racing jurisdiction in Australia. New South Wales came out as well to call Rockcliffe out because enough is enough. We're not happy, and we are fighting with the Tasmanians, and the whole industry across Australia will get right behind them. 4 years is a lifetime in politics, let alone the next few weeks. And so that's our position. It's outrageous, not good enough.
Now, speaking more specifically to Victoria, there was a report that came out in recent days that showed the state could save, I think it was nearly $500 million in a decade by scrapping greyhound racing there. Are people in the sector concerned that Victoria might be next?
No, not at all. I'm glad these people aren't doing my tax returns when I saw that report. It's very narrow, and it doesn't take into account, first of all, that Greyhound Racing Victoria contributes $844 million a year to the Victorian economy, and we've got nearly 5,000 full-time equivalent jobs. It did not take into account that we have an ecosystem. So they've only based it on the participants' tax and those sorts of things. It hasn't taken into account GST that's paid from businesses that are within the greyhound racing industry, because we're big, right? It doesn't also take into account income tax from other people and supplier network, because we have vets, we have people buying dog food, of course, and those sorts of supplies, infrastructure, so construction companies working in our industry, IT, sand and soil, and all of these sorts of things. So it's not actually an accurate reflection on the industry. And the greyhound racing industry in Victoria is not taxpayer funded. I just want to make this clear. We get 50% between the three codes of racing here of the point of consumption tax, and that's divvied up between the three. The government holds the other 50% to do with whatever they want to do. So greyhound racing in Victoria, 98% of our revenue is driven by wagering, not the government. I remember I saw a while ago some statement that was made by our opponents saying that GRB gets $40 million a year from the government. That is factually incorrect. I wish we did, but we don't. We generate our own income through the wagering of greyhounds. And last year alone, the last financial year, $3 billion was turned over on just Victorian greyhounds. And that's people from all over Australia, of course, betting on greyhounds in Victoria. So we are a big business, we're professional, and we're actually providing jobs and all of these sorts of things across Victoria, but particularly in regional Victoria. So wanting to shut this industry down, and I'm sure the farmers feel about this as well, you're going to rip the heart out of regional Victoria because of our size. And so it's just a disgrace. And we're sick and tired of politicians because they don't like something and I think everyone in Australia is actually sick of this, if I'm against it, I want to ban it sort of stance on all sorts of things. It's just not true. And so that report is very narrow. And so if you're going to say these things, actually present the whole picture.
Peita, what's your response to critics, particularly those that raise concerns about animal welfare and dog deaths related to this sector?
Over the past 10 years, after the live baiting scandal, the industry has reformed to where you can't even recognise where it was to where it is today. So our welfare and integrity standards are the best in the world. And we've invested millions and millions and millions of dollars to make sure that we have a standard that is better than it was because we had to, but also because we want these dogs to get the best care and have great integrity around the sport and those things. Yes, dogs unfortunately die in racing. It's just the nature of what we do. But we have gone from some extraordinary amount of deaths per year down to 43 in the last financial calendar year. That's how we count. So you're never going to have zero. That's just not realistic. And let me just say this as well. Whenever a dog dies on a racetrack, everyone involved with that dog, even our stewards that are running the race meeting, and the people that are at the track, other participants, they're absolutely devastated. Nobody wants that. But it's a fact of the sport we're in. It's not dissimilar to the other racing codes where things go wrong. But what we're trying to do is make our racing as safe as it possibly can be. But it will never be zero. That is not realistic.
What could be improved to try and get that number down? 43 still sounds like a lot.
It's actually not a lot because in the financial year, we have 110,000 starters, we call them, that have raced. So it could be a dog racing 5 times, 10 times. 43 against 110,000 starters is not a lot. Now, I'm not trying to justify track death at all. Please don't get me wrong about that. As I said, nobody likes that. But trying to blow these figures to where people are like, it's a killing machine and those things, in that scheme of things, it's something like 0.something% that is so low. Again, we don't want it to happen. So we're always doing track improvement, looking at the vet checking of dogs. All dogs get vet checked when they come to race. All of these things, participant education sometimes, we always are consistently trying to do things to make sure that when the dogs come to race, there is sound, but things just go wrong because it's high velocity and they're close together.
And what's your message to those that might be in, say, New South Wales or Victoria that might be watching what's happening in Tassie and wondering if that's going to happen in these bigger states?
We have to continue to be diligent and do the job that we're paid to do as regulators of the sport, and that is high levels of integrity and welfare. There's no doping of dogs and these sorts of things that go on. And if people are doing that, we don't want you in our sport. We will prosecute you and get rid of you. And we've got zero tolerance for that. So I think both the big states like ourselves in New South Wales and Queensland, we do everything possible to make sure it's a clean sport and that people are doing the right thing by their greyhounds. And let me just say, we have nearly 5,000 participants, and the level of people doing the wrong thing, it's quite small because we did do a massive clean out through 2016-17 of people that were just, you're not going to be in our sport because you're no good. Operation Tenacious we just conducted over the last financial year where every single property in Victoria was visited, and we found one person that had a serious breach, which we're starting to prosecute that person. But the majority of our participants are doing the right thing. So when something does go wrong, they get really angry because they are all saying, here's someone else that's giving us another black eye. They care for their dogs. They do the right thing by their dogs. This industry has been going for over 150 years, and we have generations of families involved here. It's a family unit that are involved in this sport because of the nature of what it takes to be a greyhound trainer. It's hard work, And it takes a lot to care for these dogs, go racing, these things. And so there's a lot of families that's all they've ever done. They love the dogs, and I can't say that any stronger, as do all of us.
Peita, I really appreciate your time today, and thank you very much for joining me on the briefing.
Thank you, Tara, and thank you for the opportunity to just clear up a few myths here, because we're sick of it.
That was Greyhound Racing Victoria Chair Peita Duncan speaking with me there for part 1 of this 2-part deep dive on greyhound racing in Australia. Part 2 is in your feeds right now if you want to go and have a listen. If you found this ep interesting, don't forget to leave us a comment or a review, or you can check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. I'm Tara Cassidy. See you next time.